Well, welcome to Be More News. And I'm Marcia Hughes. Our host has disappeared. He's got some technical difficulties, but we're here with Joel Gamble and Michael Haney. How you guys doing?
Good evening, Marsha. How you doing? Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to be seen. This is some serious stuff.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And we're here to talk about our school system and what's going on. So I understand you all are the people that we need to be talking to get an understanding of what we need to be doing to make certain that our children are prepared and ready to handle their business.
Hmm.
Right? Let's
Yes.
start with you, Joel.
So I'm actually a teacher. I'm finishing up my tenure. This is my ninth year in Baltimore County school system. And I'm actually leaving as of this week. And I'm taking a role with the YMCA, Executive Director of Corporate and Civic Engagement.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about that. Definitely going to miss the kids. It's a passion of mine to, always work with youth in different capacities. And so I'll still be doing that within my role with the YMCA and outside in the community as well. But yeah, I've been a teacher for 9 years. So I know all about, the school system and some of the issues we faced, with COVID, prior to COVID and post COVID. So,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely am excited to get into the conversation today. I got a few things to say, and so I'll go ahead and let Brother Haney, talk.
We're going to we'll pass it on to you, Michael. So if you can just give us a little bit of your background.
Well, Marsha, I'm an education advocate, particularly in the Baltimore region. As a professional, we believe that public-private partnerships were very important in order to promote and help the school system, in addition to getting our young people ready at some point to enter into the workforce. As business people, we couldn't be not concerned with the state of our school systems to not actually be on the ground. So I've chaired the board for four public high schools in the region. And it's so good to be on the call and the conversation with Joel, because I know in addition to being a educator by profession, Joel also has his foundation that at the height of the pandemic was still engaged and in touch with young people. But to your point, Marcia, we have a tremendous concern, particularly in our city, Baltimore, relative to education, post-pandemic, pre-pandemic. We just have a module of concern, and it doesn't appear as though we have a strategy.
Well, Mr. D, thank you for joining us. So why did you decide that you wanted to host this particular topic?
For me?
Yes.
Well, the young people are going back to school, and it seems like a lot of parents have questions, a lot of teachers have questions, the general public at large has questions. Do you wear a mask? Do you mandate that the students wear a mask? Some people can't be vaccinated under the age of 12. It's a battle between people's individual rights versus the rights of others. Yeah, you have the right to not wear a mask, but you don't have the right to infect me. The big thing that prompted this for me was, and Mike Haney, you know about this, there are a lot of businesses that have been created since COVID, businesses that do cleaning, that disinfect businesses, like the airport, like public spaces, like the trains, the subways. And so my big question, because I heard no one addressing it, is when students leave for the day, Joel, will the classrooms and schools be disinfected? One doctor says it's not necessary. Well, it just defies logic for me.
Right.
Yeah, from what I know, working in my school in particular, I know that our janitor and our custodial services, they actually take care of each classroom. Now, to what extent, I'm not a privy to that information. I do know that they come in, they've cleaned before kids have entered school. And I know they clean every night and every day once kids do leave. But to what extent they clean, I'm not certain because I leave the building at 2:45 p.m. So I'm not certain. They start to clean once the teachers start to leave. I do know that they clean. My room stays clean. But to what extent, I'm not sure.
Well, one of the things that I checked out, and I think this is interesting, Joel, on the teachers union on their website, BTU website, one of the things they have is a COVID-19 update. And so some of those recapped issues are that Maryland COVID-19 and Maryland Department of Health guidelines say that city schools does not follow those guidelines. And unlike other Maryland schools districts, they have no clear or public benchmark for the reopening as it relates to COVID. And so, they have a whole section on vaccine, once vaccinated, what the teachers are supposed to do. And I would ask all parents to go to the BTU, the Teachers Union, to find out what some of these issues are. I don't know how much time we have today, but they also get into the ventilation system and what's happening in there. What generally most of the HVAC systems in the school are not rated as good or excellent. And so that goes for BaltimoreCitySchools.org/buildings. And they've been told that all air filters and air purifiers would be installed and upgraded prior to reopening the school building, but it's unclear why it hasn't happened as of today. And I just printed this down a few minutes ago before I got on the air. But they already have several BTU staff, secretaries and assistants who are already in those school buildings trying to do work, but they haven't received the name and the model of what air purifiers they're using. Will it be used in spaces where MERV 13 filters cannot be installed? I mean, this is really detailed. So I would really ask all of you to go to that website and actually read it and talk with your local school system. And write a letter to the superintendent, for real.
Let me just add to that, Marcia. Back in 1973, Mr. Haney, the Maryland State Lottery came online. And the number one issue that it claimed it would address was public education. We saw the same thing when Martin O'Malley became governor. Table gambling and slots were shoved down the throats of us Marylanders in the name of education. I am here to report that the Maryland Stadium Authority, which gets the money for public education, they have taken $15 billion plus since 1973. The other thing that shocked me, Marcia, was that given that $15 billion has been accumulated from the Maryland State Lottery, given that a new baseball stadium for the Orioles, Camden Yards, we have a new stadium for the Ravens, yet just last week they reported that some classrooms were closed, some schools were closed at 12 noon, if in fact they did not have air conditioning. So what our priorities as a state, we have $15 billion we collect from gambling, slots, lottery, 2 new stadiums. We still have classrooms with icicles in the winter and ones that aren't cool.
So here, when you look at that same budget, somewhere in that budget should say that the Maryland Lottery gave a percentage of that budget, because that would be something that an expense, they expensed it, or they have a foundation. Somehow they are supposed to make a donation to the Baltimore school system.
Yeah, well, I think what happens is, and to address Marcia's issue with the cleanliness and what Joel said, I think it's compelling to say that when you need good ventilation system to cleanse the air, but you have to close school because you don't have air conditioning, that tells you one thing right there. You don't need to go any further to understand what's happening when you had to close schools early on the first day because you had poor AC units, which rely on the ventilation system, that lets you know what may be happening. And there's been no understanding about the methodical nature of cleanliness or social distancing inside the classrooms that's come out as a policy to my knowledge. I know when Baltimore City went back to school, which wasn't until May, I think it was the first week of May that they were fully in school. So they had like a month or 5 weeks of the end of the school year just to say that they went back and did it. But I think we should be concerned that in this mass mandate, requiring kids to go to school, they didn't say, and particularly on buses, we know that bus drivers called out that caused concern for parents of 800 children that could not get to school, okay, because they refused to be in a situation where there was no guidance on terms of their own health and safety, because you're in a closed bus with 25 kids, or did you say it was only going to be 10 and you had a double number of buses, or did you say because we don't have enough bus drivers we have to do what we have to do? Okay, so there's a misalignment of a lot of issues related to this, and that slots or lottery package that was passed by the legislature mandated a certain percentage of slots dollars. Now we know that in July, casinos set a record during a pandemic of income over their lifetime. So I don't know, maybe a lot of people were using their monies that they'd gotten from the government, their savings from not buying lunch, but we set a record during a pandemic. So where was the care and concern about social distancing in the casinos and mask wearing in casinos, where it still didn't set a record to a point where you say, well, apportion this money specifically for the purposes of instituting a model of mandates or safety and health related for our children going back to school. It just hasn't happened.
Oh, here's the reality. Now, why hasn't anybody in the state legislature talked about the fact that there's $15 billion that the casinos have made, and nobody's told me an amount. Has anybody seen a document or press release that shows that the casinos have given anything to Baltimore school system? So I'm sure that Miss Sandalisa, Dr. Sandalisa, is sitting there saying, I sure would like 5%. Give me 1% of that 15 billion, and then we're going to be okay, because we're now going to have everything that we need in our school system for our children. Why aren't we addressing that 15 billion? And who is playing with those strings on that purse that we can't get it, or at least nobody at this table can talk about it? Has anybody seen something? I mean, usually you see something, press release. Have you seen a press release? You got a press release?
I've actually seen an article in which it did go into some facts about the casino actually has paid into the Baltimore school system.
That's good to know.
But the situation is, if I'm not mistaken, that the original funds might have been pulled and placed elsewhere. And so now the funds that are being allocated are from the casino, and the original funds aren't there. Now, don't quote me, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if it was the Baltimore Sun that I saw that article in, but I did see something about the casinos have been paying since that agreement was put in place.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, because I've checked periodically and I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I think what Joel is saying, Marcia, is instead of in addition, because we know that Baltimore City Schools is heavily funded by the state. When the state took over Baltimore City Public Schools, part of the reason that Kurt Smoke gave it to him because he didn't have to pay for them. So I think like 75% of the $1.3 billion that Baltimore City Public Schools gets, or almost $18,000 per child, comes from the state. So instead of the state adding to what it normally get, it replaced what it was giving with casino money. So if they were giving $1 million to Baltimore City schools for 3 successive years, instead of giving $1.2 billion or 200 million in extra money gained from the casino, they were just replacing the money from the casino with money from the general fund, which was part of the issue and why they come up with this current commission. But then we can get into the atrocity of Prince George's County, which I think gets a bit of that as well, and Baltimore City being the two lowest on a totem pole when it comes to testing of children getting that funds, and really delve into the reasons why. So it's not necessarily money.
So help me, because I need to understand how this money got switched from one area to another. And was this up for vote in the legislature? And who's going to supplement the money that they're not getting, that they thought they were going to get, in order to properly educate and maintain our children?
Marsha, let me jump in for a second. We've been joined by retired educator Lillian, and she's been listening, and she's had the good fortune of being married to my brother for 53 years. Hello, Lillian.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Nice to
Lillian.
join you.
So, Lillian,
How are
any
you?
thoughts on education?
I'm sorry. No,
We can't hear you, Lillian.
can't hear you.
Any thoughts on state education, public education amid COVID? I guess we got a bad connection there. There's Chad. Hey, Chad, you gotta leave the camera alone, but
How you guys doing?
Great. How you doing, chap?
All is well.
Yeah. So you've been listening to what we've been talking about, and what do you want to weigh in on this?
Actually, I am admittedly new. I kind of got to the show late, so I have not heard everything.
That's okay. So I'll just bring you up to speed. We're talking about the Baltimore school system, and right now we're trying to figure out about all this money that was originally promised when all of these casinos were opening, and a percentage of their income was supposed to be going to the Baltimore school system. And so I'm trying to understand it, and I don't have all of the data in front of me, but then we just heard that somewhere in the Maryland legislature, they switched it from being money coming from the casinos into the school system, and now it's coming from some other budget in Maryland legislature to fund the city. But I don't have those facts in front of me, so it's something that I certainly want to research and get clarity on why we're not getting the original money, which was the reason primarily why they were able to get all of that money in the first place. $15 billion or some ridiculous number.
Well, I don't have a lot of information on it. I know I'm from Baltimore, and I was under the assumption for a long time that the lottery, but even before the casinos, was also supposed to benefit the schools. So if that is what they said they would do, and then they didn't do it, if they didn't honor those contracts or policies that were written in the legislation, then why are we honoring their business?
Well, because we have a lot of gamblers.
Marsha, if I can add a point of clarity, I don't think it's a matter, when they earmarked a percentage of lottery or slots dollar for education, it wasn't up to the legislature to decide budget-wise how that money that was turned over to the state general fund was appropriated. So the state says, well, we give Baltimore City $1.3 billion, even though the money from slots or lottery is supposed to go specifically to education. If they give $500,000, it was part of what they normally give. where we may be saying, well, if we normally give them 1.2 billion, why don't they get 1.7 if they're eligible to get 500 million extra? So there was no extra money going. They were just using that slots and lottery money to augment, not supplement, the money that the state was appropriating to the jurisdictions that were eligible for that. So I don't think it was a legislative issue. I think that what the legislature is attempting to do through the Kerwin Commission is figure out a way to come up with a significant amount of money, although I don't believe money is our issue, particularly when you look at Baltimore City kids who graduated with a less than 1% average. That's what we really need to be talking about, spending 16 or 17,000 per student with overhead less during the pandemic because lights weren't on, heat was less, et cetera, et cetera. So there should have been more money available for education given the way that we had to teach last year. But, you know, I just want to be clear in that the money went to education, but be it the governor who does the budget and the legislature who passes the governor's budget didn't give extra to what they normally give for education to Baltimore City or Prince George's County or Howard County, because I think they all share in that education fund.
Yes, an educational trust fund. And so the original agreement was a specific amount. And so no matter if the casinos are doing well above exceedingly expected, that original amount that's agreed upon is what they need to give to the educational trust fund. And so they've continued to give to the educational trust fund. And so, but those funds have been, like I said, some of the funds are still in the trust fund and haven't been spent yet. So I've heard, and so the governor's sitting on some of those funds.
Why?
I'm not sure. You had to ask Governor Hogan about that one. But and speaking of Governor Hogan, he's also the person that denied and vetoed the Kerwin Commission, which, you know, I was actually fighting towards getting for our schools. Kerwin Commission's recommendations for funding for schools.
Can you back up and talk about, just give us a brief overview so that our audience is aware of what the Kerwin Commission actually does and why it was created? And I'm sure you know.
So obviously there's a certain standard that that is set as far as school funding and what's needed in order to fund schools, in order for our students to be successful. And so the Kerwin Commission comes up with what those standards are and how much funding that needs to go into the school systems. So that's what their recommendation was. So they came up with a specific amount of funding that's needed for our kids to be successful in the Baltimore City school system. And that was turned down because it was thought that it was too much spending on education. And so that's something that several people, several councilmen, several folks in the community, several advocates were fighting towards and trying to get, but it was denied. And so it was very surprising that after that was denied, that Hogan during the pandemic offered $10 million to each one of the school districts if they opened up early. If you guys remember during that time, it was pushed that they wanted to open schools up early, and so he offered $10 million to those schools that did open up early. And he actually, if I'm not mistaken, bashed Baltimore County because they wasn't ready to open up early and didn't have a plan. So, yeah, it's been a tough go around, you know, with politics and education. But what I would like to see is every kid get the same opportunities.
Equity.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we can't talk about standardized tests and everything being standard across the board if all of the students that are going to school aren't getting the same opportunities.
Same education, same experience.
And we know that's not the case because we got AC that's not working in some schools. We got the heat that's not working in schools, and we got water that's not working in schools. And
What do
that's
you mean you don't have water working in school? What does that mean? What? No water. What does that mean? Water?
Well, that
No
simply
water.
means that the school sometimes has bottled water. Okay, they don't always have fountain water. It costs a lot to fix that water system within the school, and every year is a problem with the plumbing. So again, we talk about allocation of funds and things of this nature, but we are really sidetracking from the real problems.
And the real problems. Give me 5 real problems since you're in there all the time.
Okay, one real problem is superintendent. Let's
Oh,
start
and
from
they're
the head.
all right.
All right,
Mhm.
we're talking about Hogan and the funding and allocation of funds and things of that nature. That's great, but we know politics. We're no fools. Okay, we know that some people will get it and some will not. We're not going to say that Baltimore City is going to be the best school in the world or best school system in the world, because we will just be joking, okay, and making fools of ourselves. This seems to be a greater plan for the kids to be unsuccessful. We need help. Okay.
Did you say a
Basically,
greater
that's it.
plan? Wait a minute, Miss James. Did you say there's a greater plan for our children not to be successful? Is that what you just said?
I agree. Yes, I do agree. I do
Okay.
agree. Look at the system, look at the stats, look at the rating of the students from elementary, middle school, and also high school. If you have been listening, and I'm sure each one of you have, Fox 45 has put out data almost daily about something happening with the school system. And we need to look back and we need to analyze why these things are happening. So we have to start with the head.
So there's also I heard this tinge that you were going down a track, and I used the word diversity and inclusion. And there's another word that I like that's real big with me, and it starts with a R. And so to me, is this a racism issue because we got all these black children in Baltimore?
Okay,
Let's
we're not
talk
getting
about
into the
truth.
critical race theory yet. Okay,
Oh,
that's way
okay.
down the road. It's not really way down the road. Actually, that's something coming up in the school
Okay.
year. So before we jump to that,
All
let's
right.
talk about the problem that is really right now Baltimore City's issue. The issue is really we got, what is it, under the superintendent, she has like 11 people underneath of her, high salaries also. Her salary is larger than the governor's salary. So therefore, I think that some of the things that are going on is that we're overlooking it or we're putting a blind eye to it.
But what is that?
May I comment on that, Ms. James? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Oh, no, please go
How
ahead.
are you?
So that was one of the thoughts I was having while you guys was talking was to back up to the point of like, number one, why are we relying on a gambling entity to support, like, why would I ask a casino to support educating my children? Because I would never go to the casino and ask anyone in there to teach my children anything, first of all. So why would we take their money, right? But secondly, to your point, Ms. James, I've got kindergarten teachers making 6 figures. I've got principals at schools that are making more than our mayor. So you want to know where the money goes. You were, Mr. Gamble, and forgive me for not being familiar with you guys, but you had mentioned like a 10 million. I think one of you or Mr. Haney, you had mentioned the $10 million from the governor. That $10 million wouldn't even trickle down to the schools because if you add up the salaries of all the superintendents and all the directors of this and that, I think we did the math one time sitting here at work one day, and it was almost $10 million just to get down through all the administration to pay their salaries.
Mr. Chap, if I can jump in, Marsh, and chime in, I think Joe mentioned the $10 million, and I am one of the things with the Kerwin Commission, the goal was for equality in education. It turned into a money thing, that they need money, okay? The reason that slots and the lottery pay for education, because that was the deal in order to get it passed so that we can have slots, that a certain amount of it would go to education as a game. It was just a game. I don't think we have a money issue. We don't have a money issue. we have an accountability issue. We have an accountability issue at North Avenue. We have accountability issue in the homes of these parents of students. So let's make certain that we ensure that the parents are as accountable as the system, particularly in Baltimore City, because the best systems that you find in the state of Maryland are where you have a high rate of participation in home and school meetings and parents' involvement in schools. So let's not take away some of the accountability from parents. I think one of the good things during COVID was that parents had an opportunity to be accountable for the education of their children because they were in the homes. Whether they were accountable and actually made things happen is a horse of another color. But they had to be accountable for the education of their children. So if we look at it from that perspective and how well the children did coming out of the homes, having to be homeschooled practically, then we can see that the accountability isn't just money, it isn't just the superintendent, but it is a problem that we all are responsible for.
I agree with that. I think that there's accountability, there's accountabilities on every level. Working with kids, teaching kids out in the street with these kids, I will say that there's absolutely accountability on every level. And I think from my perspective, being a boots on the ground, we're pouring so much money into these salaries that could be used to support the parents at home. Maybe that's something we look at. Maybe taking the $10 million or $7 million or whatever, like I said, it's public record. And you can look up salaries for Baltimore City public schools in like 2019. And it was a couple $1 million just going to administration. And if people would consider having reasonable salaries, especially for the results we're getting for those salaries right now, and I'm not judging anybody because COVID has been very complex for everyone. But if people would consider more reasonable salaries and some of that money could be somehow appropriately assigned to helping the parents at home, because we can't just we're stuck in such a loop of, basically Baltimore City public daycare that the parents and me as a parent, I'm 43 years old now and most of my kids are almost done. I got one more to push through, but I would feel, and I'm a very experienced person, but even I would feel unprepared if I had to educate my child on my own. And I could do it and I would figure it out, but not everybody has that capacity. And especially younger parents, if we just how do we empower, because I feel like before the public school system was really in full swing, and I think it is about the money, you can't ignore the money. People raised their children. So if I'm a painter, my sons came with me to work. I taught them how to be painters, right? I'm a carpenter. I'm a landscaper. I do all these things. I bring my sons with me when I'm working, and they learn, right? And so we've abandoned that system and traded that system in for the public school system, right? One story I'll share real quick, and then I'll back off a little bit. Is that part of my heritage is Native American, and North American, South American, doesn't matter. Natives to indigenous to America, before they were forced on reservations and before the country took over, we as a people, you would have a tribe, and within that tribe was clans, and within those clans were elders. And so let's say a clan had 40 elders. 40 elders would pour into each individual child one at a time to help that child discover themselves and their truth, right? But now it's flipped. Now, instead of having 40 experienced, wise elders in the community pouring into each child, we've got one inexperienced young teacher pouring into 40 children. And it's not getting reinforced at home. So therein lies the problem. And I feel like we're perpetuating this system because there's so much money in it, because a superintendent in a city, in a public school, can make well over six figures, because a kindergarten teacher in Baltimore City School, more than one, can make six figures, right? And I'm not saying that their time's not worth that, but if that's what we're spending on a teacher's salary for kindergarten, which kindergartners their curriculum is not that serious, bro. It's not that heavy. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something to think about. Food for thought, I guess.
Well, so we're having some technical challenges. If you're speaking, do put your microphone on mute. Marcia, you've got a lot of feedback here tonight. I was wondering, one of the guests, Jess Morgan, said education starts at home. I was wondering, could you talk at all, Marcia, or maybe even Lydia, about homeschooling as a viable option? Again, if you're not speaking, put your microphone on mute, okay?
It's a viable option in my house, and my grandson has been homeschooled for years, and he's on a program called Abeka. And in that Abeka program, we get this huge box with all kinds of books and everything with it. We also have the ability for him to be able to talk to somebody. There's something online as well as videos for them to be able to follow up on. And it is really powerful. And then they would, at the end of the semester, they then submit it to the city school system for their approval, and they go through the grading to make certain that he has met all the state standards and requirements. And he's really a self-starter. We have internet in the house that everybody is capable, and so therein is part of the issue that we have in many homes that do not have connectivity. So if you don't have connectivity to be able to deal with some of these homeschool programs, and we just particularly like this one, then what are you to do? We should be able to have free access to broadband. We have Verizon's now getting ready to go into all of these new apartment buildings that are going in. They're going to have all types of connection there. And then we're getting an absorbent amount of fees from Comcast that's really not making a donation. And I would ask that the whole city really look at this organization called the Intelligent Community Forum. I've been talking about this for years. These guys travel the world and give awards out to people to cities and countries who are actually giving free connection to their citizens. One small city just stays in my mind, and we know that it's not to scale of Baltimore, but LaGrange, Georgia, and it just stuck with me, and that was 10 years ago probably. He took back all the pipe from all the corporations and all the people that were using the city pipe. And he did totally wired that whole thing where everybody that is a citizen in LaGrange, Georgia has free access to the internet. Now that's 10 years ago. If you go up there and look at all these other countries and cities globally, it's a global organization, and see the numbers of people, leaders who have taken on the charge and said, we want our people to have access to the information that's on the internet. We want our kids to have access. We want our parents to have access. And we have to make the commitment. And quite frankly, during Catherine's tenure, I went to her IT guy, Frank Johnson, Frank something, and I told him about this. I went to his face, sat at his desk, gave him the information, and I said, this is what we need to be doing in the city of Baltimore. There shouldn't be a child or a person, an adult, that cannot get on the internet for free. And all these people are taking. Everybody's taking, but who's giving back to our children? Everybody's winning except our children. And I'm sick of it. And it's a shame and it's an embarrassment.
I agree with you.
This is 2021. We've been talking about the digital divide under Ron Brown, the Department of Commerce. Think about that. Secretary Ron Brown, his director of the National Telecommunication and Information Agency within the Department of Commerce in 1994 wrote, and it's the report's still up there. I want y'all to go up there and read it. It's called Falling Through the Net. It's still relevant in 2021. We have not moved the needle, and it's absolutely shameful that we've allowed this to occur. And we can party, we can do all this, but our children are suffering. And so now we've got to talk about what happens in the next 5 years, next 10 years, next 20 years. Who are these people? What are they able to contribute? What have we taught them? What example have we actually set for them? It's appalling. And it's unconscionable that we sit here and go through all this foolishness and we're actually having a conversation that our children can barely read and write. It's shameful. It is shameful. And I've worked with some of these children that have not been given the proper education. And we're responsible. We're responsible. Don't tell me about another building we need to be building. Don't tell me about another something that need to be have some flag hanging off of it. I don't want to hear it. The only thing that this city needs to be talking about is how we're going to develop these young people and to make them responsible, contributing adults, make them responsible and learn how to be part of the economy, to be able to be the next scientist, to be the next this, the next doctor, the next artist, the next whatever. How are they going to be that if you don't even give them the information or the infrastructure to be the best that they can be? And then we sit around all high, as my daughter says to me sometimes when I get so prideful, she said, you up there high, sitting high, looking low. That's what too many of us are doing, and we're not handling our business.
You know, Joe, you mentioned how Hogan has not been supportive of Maryland, particularly Baltimore City Public Schools. Martin O'Malley wasn't a friend either. As I checked, Martin O'Malley sued for the state of Maryland to be less responsible for public education, particularly in Baltimore City Public Schools. Martin O'Malley gave us Dr. Andre Alonso. Santa Lisa is Alonso. She came from under his tutelage, right? So here was a man fired the likes of Barney Wilson at Baltimore Polytechnic. So it's been an ongoing struggle. And while Hogan may have been maybe against our children, I know twice as many Democrats who have been seemingly as well against our children. This is a 9-to-1 Democrat.
It's everybody. And politics don't have nothing to do with it. It is who you are as a human being, and that you cannot see that this needs to occur, and your spirit and your soul needs to be arrested, that you can't even see what we need to be doing for our children.
Hey, Donnie, if I can say, let me let Joe go. Joe, you go ahead, man, because you're in education as well. You go ahead, man.
No, I was going to actually bring your name up, Mike. So myself, along with Mike, got a chance. I was blessed to meet Mr. Haney. We were actually, my organization started, with me being a teacher, my organization, and we saw the need for the digital kind of bridging the gap for technology. And so we started to give out devices and Chromebooks to kids in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Mr. Mike, I actually met him because my dad was sharing on the golf course, sharing, about our organization and how we were donating laptops and devices to kids. Because of the pandemic, a lot of the kids didn't have devices. And Mr. Mike, as a citizen, concerned citizen, and a person, like you said, Ms. Marsha, that, we just need to step up and be those folks. Mr. Mike was able to donate 20 to 40 Chromebooks. And at this point in time, my organization has donated over 200 Chromebooks to Baltimore City and County students, as well as partner with Comcast to give free internet services to several families. So like Ms. Marsha said, I think it's, we could all talk about everybody else and their jobs and what they should be doing. But us as citizens who, are able bodies can do the best that we can to provide for our kids as well. And, like several comments came in, it starts in the home. It starts with the community. It starts with us, because nobody's going to save us but us.
Well, let me
Yeah,
just add to
absolutely,
that,
John.
Joe. All of Mike, that next June is a statewide election, and I think now is the time for us to make public education, particularly in Baltimore City and Prince George's County, which are repeatedly at the bottom in the state of Maryland. So anybody want to be governor, whether it's Peter Francho, Rashawn Baker, Wes Moore, Michael Steele, Kelly Schultz, if you want to be governor, you better have a task force to address the issues of Baltimore City, Prince George's County, the two majority black school jurisdictions in the state. I think, Joe, we'll start with the election. You will not be our governor if you don't have a plan for public education. There's no accountability on North Avenue, Joe. There's no accountability. Who's accountable? Everybody's scratching everybody's back. How can
So Donnie, to your point, Donnie, if there's no accountability in North Avenue, then there's no accountability in City Hall. There's no accountability in the state house. There's no accountability in the individual houses. There's no accountability anywhere. So the two poorest jurisdictions with the highest per student spending have the two lowest. 58% of the Baltimore City high schoolers that graduate with a diploma can't read above the 4th grade level. That's criminal. And who's accountable for that? At least we didn't have internet when we were growing up, and I think Ms. Jews will agree, but at least I could read the News American, the Baltimore Sun, and the Afro American. Yeah, so things have changed relative to the platform of education, but I have to care about wanting my child to be educated. First, I have to ensure that my child cares and understands who they are as a human being so I can put something good into them. So we have to look at how we're educating. We have to get to a point of solutions-based solving this issue solutions-based. And first, we got to teach our kids what human looks like and what human is and what good character is, so that we begin to teach them the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. At least they're beginning to feel good about themselves.
So let me just jump in here right now, and I hear you, and I think I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and the reality is that we have far too many people in our city that are in trauma. They are in trauma. You've got guns going off. You got people getting shot. The numbers are outrageous. We are killing each other. We're killing each other. We're on drugs. We're in prison. There's nobody in the home. You got people who are sitting there just rocking every day. And we have to address all of those problems that are at home. And those children have to go home to that. So this isn't like we're talking about some little wonderful upper class, middle class home that we are really ready to do. And you got the people there that are ready to support. But I'm telling you right now that there are some of those people who are not doing what they're supposed to do. But I'm going to talk about the community of people who are on welfare, who just got displaced out of Perkins Homes. Who knows where they're going to go, what kind of problems they're dealing with. We're talking about a holistic approach to how do you deal with a hurting community. And that hurting community.
Don't disagree with you, Marsha. Marsha, don't disagree with you, because I'm on the ground and I see these kids.
But then don't say but and put a comma.
No.
Don't say but. Don't say but.
I'm in the schools. Dealing with the kids,
don't say but, because you need to address those parents and those families that are sitting there that are suffering and that are in real trauma and having real problems.
And that's why a community school approach may be beneficial with wraparound services that deal with the trauma, but we can no longer allow the excuses to be something that keeps our children from having an education. What does education look like? Everyone going to post-secondary or college or Hampton? No. It's at least being able to survive and be able to count $5 and to read a newspaper. So let's just start with the basics.
I don't know
Okay.
what you're talking about, because some of the people that
I hear
I'm
you.
talking about are a very large percentage of people that I'm talking about. I don't have
I
that
don't
capacity.
disagree with
They
you,
can't
but you know
read.
what? We have to stop making excuses.
It's not
Like
an
you
excuse,
are.
it's reality. And how you gonna change
I'm
it?
in
You
the
see,
middle of it. I'm
reading,
listening to
I'm trying
gunfire
to start
now.
leadership. You're not
But
dealing a reality-based conversation.
people need to be held accountable and stop waiting for people to take care of our problems ourselves, whether it's gunshots, trauma, this or that. At some point, we have to resolve
Who you gonna
issues.
do it? Who you gonna do it? Name some people.
Hey,
Name
come on down here
name
with
some.
me. Come on
Name
down
some.
here with me.
Name
And
some.
let's get real. Let's
I'm
get real.
being real. Name some.
Because I'm not giving excuses to our people anymore.
Okay,
Let me,
name some.
let
We're
me,
not
Give me
depending
5
on
things you
Reagan.
would do
We're
right
not
now.
depending
5
on
things you would
Martin
do right now.
O'Malley. We have to depend on ourselves. Take the excuses away.
okay, let me just jump in here. Want to reel it back. Joel, let me tell you why it's so important that you're here. Because you play major league ball, right?
NFL, yes.
And we've had a lot of athletes come through Baltimore. Well, you're one of the only ones who gives back. I know it. Maybe I'm slow, but here in Baltimore, plus you at Easterwood, and I grew up in Easterwood, 1500 block of Moreland Avenue. And I say that because we as an American people, we put so much emphasis on sports. My kid got a football scholarship. My kid's going to Maryland or Temple or A&T, and we playing ball. But how many of our stars who go on to do great things come back and do things that I got to say I'm proud of when I look at LeBron, the give back? How do we get more of our stars? Chu Smith gives back. Gregory Branch.
Donnie, I can say that nowadays in Baltimore, there's a wide variety of successful athletes that have come back other than myself. I would
Keon
say
Carpenter.
Keon Carpenter, Chu Smith, Aaron Maben, Tavon Mason. I can. The list goes on. It's definitely been more than when I was growing up. I didn't have any celebrity athletes coming in, and so there are a lot of programs. There are a lot of athletes that are giving back. Deontay Harris, Brandon Copeland. The list goes on, and these are folks that didn't even grow up in Baltimore City. Some of them, and so there are a lot of folks that's in Baltimore that's giving back. I would say that we need to see more of just our citizens wrapping their arms around those folks that are giving and support those folks so that it is sustainable. Because I know Keon Carpenter and Chu Smith that's been doing it for years. I've been doing it for 10 years myself. Chu's been doing it longer than me, 20, 30 years. Keon was doing it took 20 years too.
Atlanta and Baltimore.
But it seems as though they're doing it by themselves. And so that's a big issue, because when each of us are gone, the work shouldn't stop. We shouldn't be, running ourselves in the ground and trying to do programs and trying to do different things on our own. There should be support and there should be some sustainability behind that, because one person doing programs and doing different things in the community is not sustainable. And we see a lot of white-led organizations getting some support in our communities, but we don't see black-led organizations getting support. How many folks are supporting Chu Smith? Is he fully funded? How many folks were supporting Keon Carpenter, myself, Tavon Mason, Aaron Maben? Aaron was working in the school system. And then next thing you know, he wasn't a teacher anymore. So
because he put the
so we can ask our athletes to come back all we want, but if they aren't getting supported when they come back, Melo came back and did the Melo Center and all of that, and there was a whole bunch of stuff behind that because he wasn't in town, and and things. The money wasn't getting appropriated.
Living classrooms took it over.
And Living Classrooms is a what run organization?
It's a what?
Oh,
James Bond.
Exactly. CEO.
Ponytail dude. You know the dude with the ponytail got that building for $1 on the harbor.
So I'm just going to keep it real when it comes to community-based programming and things of that nature. Is our Black-led organizations and our athletes need support when they actually are doing things in the community, because there's plenty of folks that are doing stuff.
And you're absolutely right, Joe. One of the questions, hold on, Donnie, just want to, because I'm going to get back. Michael, I know what you're saying. Part of our challenge, and especially with what we're talking about, these individuals who are doing things, how do we do it to scale? So if we already know that we have people who are underserved, they are financially not ready, they're traumatized, they have all these issues. How do we deal with how we're going to help everybody mentally, emotionally, giving them a job, giving them training, getting them ready to hit the road and to be able to help? If your parents can't help you, Yolanda, Yoshi, you go in here and you can get on, because Donnie put something in there for you to respond. But she says, if the parents can't read, they can't help the children. And that's just one example of what we're faced with. So we need to just figure out, how do we help those individuals? What organization, excuse me, is set up to be able to do that?
We know all of the organizations in the city. I mean, I can name them. I'm sure Miss Marsha, I'm sure you can name them. Donnie can name them. We all know the same organizations that are doing the work for years, boots to the ground. So they need the support. Why is it that white-led organizations are getting the support to work in our communities, and they aren't stepping foot, boots to the ground in a Sandtown, Winchester, or Easterwood? Why is that happening? Why are they getting federal funding? Why are they getting, why are they able to partially fund Black-led organizations? Why aren't the Black-led organizations specifically getting those funds?
It's a nonprofit.
Imagine if Chu Smith was to get fully funded. What could he possibly do? And he does great things. What could some other organizations? What about a Damian Cooper that runs Project Numa, Alfonso Mayo, a Van Brooks, who's running Safe Alternative School? What if these folks are getting fully funded? Joni Hart's Holyfield. What about Erica Bridgeford? What if these folks that we name, that we all know that are doing the work? So it's not like we don't know who's doing the work. We all know. But what if these folks are getting fully funded and fully supported in our communities? Imagine the work that they could do in comparison to some of these other organizations that's just beating around the bush, taking advantage of Black communities and getting funding and skimming off the top.
Joe, you kind of see right here. Hold on 1 second. So one of the things
you keep making me hold up.
I know. I'm sorry. But you called me and told me to come on. So, but suppose we did a roundtable off air with all these people and create an organization that's nonprofit.
It's nonprofit poverty pimps, and they come in and take advantage of the socio-economic of the Black community. Joe, we call them the nonprofit mafia. And if you crack slick on the rich white ones, they'll blackball you or whiteball you or whatever it's called when they cut you off. All the way from New York.
Yeah, I'm sure. But but I'm blessed to know, Michael Haney, folks that really, want to do the work and support. I really appreciate, and I'll say it over and over again. This guy, I didn't even meet him, but just from him having a conversation with my dad and seeing the work that I was doing, he decided that he wanted to donate Chromebooks, and so we need more of that. As far as conversation, we could talk all day, but we need more action and more folks to kind of wrap their arms around these people that are doing the work. I know last year during Christmas time, My partnership with Brandon Copeland, who's still playing in the NFL now, we usually do a Christmas giveaway for kids. I decided that last year that we needed to do a Christmas giveaway for community leaders because they're always forgotten about. Yeah, we have trauma, plenty of it. I've seen people shot, and I could probably name 10 to 11 people that I grew up with that aren't here with us. So plenty of us coming from Baltimore have gone through the trauma, even the ones that are successful. And so I decided to, instead of giving to the families, give to those community leaders. A Sean Stanetta, Alfonso Mayo, Joni Hart's Holyfield, Erica Bridgeford. We never think about these strong folks that are give until they're gone. Keon Carpenter gave, and now he's gone. But folks didn't. I'm not sure his relationships with folks. I can't speak on it because I don't know. But we need to make sure that these folks that are giving get their flowers now. Chu Smith needs to have a street named after him. Folks that's in the community need to have the streets, like give their flowers now while they're alive and they're doing the work, and not, all of a sudden when they're gone, we miss them and they did great work and they never heard you say it.
We got somebody.
And you're absolutely right.
I'm trying to give us some airtime. PEBTS. Hello. You online? Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Took you long enough.
I've been here. I was waiting for you to say something.
We can see you. You deep throat. Is this Yolanda Pulley?
I am Yolanda Pulley. My organization is called People Empowered by the Struggle, PEBTS. We're the organization that's calling for the resignation of Santa Lisa's and the disbanding of the school board. So when you talk about, when that guy got on and said what he said about the school system is absolutely true. The money needs to follow the students. If they do not want their children in school during COVID because of these times, I'm getting massive phone calls about schools that have COVID now, and they're not sending these children home. And they and the crazy part about it is when they quarantine, there is no virtual learning for quarantine. This is just ridiculous. It's crazy. They need to stop. It's utterly. It's disheartening. And Mr. Haney, I understand what you're saying about the parents, but it should not be attached to a criminal record. We done went to court with parents during COVID that had to make a decision on whether they was going to work or not, and leave their children at home. And you can't expect these children to just jump on to a virtual learning, and there is no one there to help them. If they had to make the choice between school and home, they made the choice to pay the bills, and they should not be charged with criminally because they had to make that decision. And right now, parents should not have to make a decision on whether they want their children to bring COVID home or be put into a Baltimore City school system. Hogan was wrong for offering them that money to open up schools. I'm so upset right now because I just got a phone call from a young lady whose granddaughter has COVID and she's 10. Lily Mae, and they're not even reporting this stuff, these schools that have COVID. Lily Mae Jackson on 2200 Sinclair Lane. The fifth graders, the first week of school, the sixth graders had COVID. Now, the second week of school, the fifth graders came back with COVID, and her 10-year-old grandchild now has COVID. And I had to listen to this child say, I don't want to die. That should not be an option for parents. It should, when they lied about the virtual learning, 2,000 students being a part of it, they lied. It's all a lie. They sit up there and manipulate the data. Parents did not ask for this. And we tried to partner with Baltimore City and offer them hybrid places where people could go in smaller settings for children. And what is his name? What was Stokes? Robert Stokes. Yeah, well, Councilman Stokes, he had the audacity to get off the Zoom meeting when I said we're the organization that's calling for the resignation of Santa Lisa. He got off and told his staff to tell us that he had another meeting. Why would you schedule a meeting with us if you already had a previous meeting? Don't make sense. But just like you said, there is no accountability, but yet People Empowered by the Struggle going to hold all people accountable. And Marsha, you know This has been on my platform, the calling for the resignation of her since I was running for mayor. Because I told you in an interview that she needs to go. Hey, there go my homegirl right there.
That's real though. Yeah. Yeah.
This is it's absurd that they're sitting up there making children. I mean, people choose between the two. And I have parents that's not sending their children to school. They said that they're willing to face the court actions. And I got lawyers set up who's going to help these people, because they should not have made the decision on whether they wanted to go virtual learning. He says students who request virtual learning get denied. Why? They got denied because they wanted to manipulate the data, Mr. Chaps. They manipulated the data and they lied and said it was 2,000 students enrolled. But I have a parent who has a letter that said that 2,000 students did not sign up for virtual learning. So they was proud to put that statement out there.
Wow.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Regarding the number, I just wanted to confirm that even 1 week before school started, I received an email saying there were still openings for the virtual learning, that you can still enroll your child.
That's
I received an email before school started. So that email encouraged me as a parent to consider the virtual learning because there were still openings, so they were not filled out.
Well, see, and that's another problem, because they actually closed it down during that time and then they opened it back up. So that's a problem, because I have, like I said, I have hundreds of parents calling me, asking me what could they do. And I called the state board and I called Baltimore City board, and you know what they told me? Homeschool the children. What?
Right.
But the money don't follow the child when they're homeschooled.
Right. So how are you going to do it?
That's the unfortunate part, because I don't know why Baltimore City or any jurisdiction didn't have or work out a model where they could do either homeschool or virtual or in class if they were uncomfortable, because they have no systemic approach to education right now. It's just get them back in school for whatever reasons that they want them back in school, regardless of the health consequences, with no option for virtual. Because I know quite a few parents that actually did very well during the pandemic because they had an opportunity to work with their children. They helped themselves, they helped their children, they got more involved. But like you said, everyone isn't in that situation, but they were accountable for them. But Baltimore City, I have no idea. I don't think Dr. Santali should have ever been hired. I think that the
That's
Baltimore
a strong
City
statement, Michael Caney. That's a strong statement.
I know her. I know Dr. Santali. I know Dr. Alonzo. I know Dr. Thornton. I know Tisha Edwards, who should have gotten the job. I know them like we have conversation here, and they knew me. Dr. Santali doesn't even want to deal with me because I held her accountable. She came in to shut down public schools in accordance to the 21st Century Plan, which gave Baltimore City schools $1 billion to shut down schools. And that's what they did. But
I
the
told
school
you
board,
Tisha Edwards should have been the school CEO. Should have been Dr. Andre Bundley, who has experience working with traumatized children. Not Tisha Edwards. I said it right. Thank you.
hey, listen, so we are talking in the same sense. But the point is that the school board is accountable, or else they're cronies, or else they're lackeys, and they don't do their job. Because if they were doing their job, they would fire her now. But that's what happens when you don't have an elected school board.
And that's what we're asking for. We're asking, I just sent the email to Mary Washington asking her to back us on the elected school board. We're going to follow the model that Barbara Robinson had on elected school board. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We just feel like our children deserve better. That we deserve better than this woman who gets paid $340,000. Now, I'm not a mathematician or nothing, but in the next 5 years, that's $8-point-something million that she done just collected in taxpayers' money with our children education looking the way it do.
Don't we get two elected school board members in this next election coming up? There's two at-large seats that will be on the ballot, right? Does everyone know that? Because they're not putting it out there, you know?
Yeah, but see, only the two, because they don't want to be the outcast. They will sit up there and go with the majority. So when the majority rules, then what's the point? We need a fully elected board. We need resignation. We need her to resign immediately. We have people that can replace her tomorrow if she resigns. So that's not the issue either. The issue is that, just like you said, that she should never have been in the place that she in. But because people
Never.
owe some favors, she the one that put her in place. And that was, and just like you said, it's the cronyism, it's the nepotism, and it's all that goes on in our school system. We even asked for a forensic audit, and we haven't gotten one yet.
Why? And what was the excuse?
They just
Because O'Malley people making all the damn money and they don't want you to find out.
Well, the school budget has always been part of the political process of who gets to control the $1.3 billion, because that's part of what the spend is. 80% of the money that they spend in Baltimore City Public Schools is for overhead. To what Mr. Chat was talking about, salaries, et cetera, and 20% of it filters down to the actual in-room, in-classroom learning, which is atrocious. You know, not saying that teachers don't deserve good salaries, but when you're paying a CEO almost $400,000 with no result, I told Dr. Santalise that you need to decentralize North Avenue. You go to the worst performing high school. Your COO goes to the worst performing junior high school. You move these school board meetings around jurisdictionally so that you don't squeeze 300 people into a 50-room room, so that you don't hear from people. And she told me that she had to go home.
She told you what?
She told me she was tired of me. She was going home and letting her husband give her a back rub, quote unquote. Michael Johnson heard it. Other people heard it in the school board room. I kid you not. I said,
why nobody thought it was a good idea to investigate her husband's hedge fund company? Why nobody thought that was a good idea? Who offers water, clean water, to countries around the United States? But you got a school system that does not have water in it. That does not make sense to me.
Is that his bottled water that they bring into the kids at the school?
I don't know, but you know, he also he got $1 billion from the Bloomberg Institution to send children to John Hopkins School, and not one Baltimore City resident kid got it.
It's all connection.
This is ridiculous. I mean, this is like something on TV. Really, I mean, it's like it's a series that we need to create. I mean, how do we literally change the lives? What is it? Because this is bigger than what I even thought, right? It's bigger than what I even thought. And there has to be a strategy that everybody shouldn't just be two people on that board. Everybody on that school board needs to be elected. Every seat needs to be elected on that school board. And we need to sit down and look at that budget and redo that budget with this new mayor and how they're getting paid. This is ridiculous.
Marsha, I want to make one.
Go ahead, Donnie.
Whoever's on the school board, they need a foot in their box for keep taking the names of famous black people off of the schools. In Sandtown, they took George G. Kelson's name off of a building and put up Sandtown Winchester Academy. They just Malcolm X. They keep taking down our historic names and putting up these off-brand names, and in the process, they're destroying Black history. Shame on them. They should go back to school for history.
Well, they're determined to erase us from history altogether. That's the sad part. We're going 400 years back into slavery when it comes down to our education. We should not have to fight for something that's supposed to be rightfully given to us, which is education.
Right.
And we're still fighting the system of a white man's oppressed. This education
by
system
black people.
It was not made for black people. And we asked them for a black curriculum, and we still haven't gotten it yet. This is not this is not the only time that we have called for her resignation, to be honest. Because this is the first time we made it public, and that we're asking people to support us, because she don't listen to us. She don't listen to no teacher. She don't listen to no parent. She don't listen to no student. You know, she put her behind up in the air, and she walks past you by doing all this crazy mess, talking crazy to parents. I even invited her outside one time because, you know, she got smart with some parents, and, clearly she needs a little bit of discipline because, like I said, you're not going to talk to me crazy, and you're not that much older than me. Yes, all of that, Donnie, all of that.
May I?
But I was surprised when they gave her a second contract, and I'm going to let Blanca speak for a second. But it's black and brown children because the number of Hispanic children in the Baltimore City Public Schools the past 10 years has been compelling, particularly over the East Baltimore area. Patterson, National Academy Foundation, schools over in the East Baltimore area have been heavily Hispanic populated, and black and brown people need to come back and take charge of our school system. However, Baltimore City contributes very little of its budget to the school system, which means that they have very little control and power over what stays. Now, the government has been nice and allowed Brandon to appoint or to okay a couple of his appointees to the Baltimore City public school system. But if we want to
that's not no, the governor no longer has a say so in the election of the appointees. He do not. Brandon Scott appoints all 7, and 2 of them are elected.
I think that the governor gave him the ability to do so, but let's look into that. I don't want to challenge you on that, but I thought that the governor gave Brandon the ability to do that, but because the state contributes so much of its budget, the governor still has the right to seat who's on that board.
No, as of 2018,
okay.
I think it's 2018. 2017-18, it was taken away from Hogan and given all to the mayor. So the mayor has
Jack Young sat many of us on that board. Then is what you're saying,
right? So
right.
So
okay.
right now, all 7 is elected, and then all 7 is selected, and 2 of them are elected. And like I said, we need a fully elected board. The people have the right to say who they want govern over top of their children.
Right.
We have the right to say, because I still got skin in the game. I still have, a 16-year-old child and my grandchildren that's in Baltimore City schools. And like I said, you cannot blame the parents. The same system that failed these children is the same system that failed the parents, the grandparents, and the great-grandparents.
Right.
So if they cannot,
it's generational.
If they cannot read or write, how do you expect them to help the child? They cannot.
Mm-hmm. And it's abuse. It's really abuse. And go ahead, say what you're going to say, Blanca.
Yes, I wanted to share with you briefly that I was a board member for a nonprofit that was established by the name of Da Vinci Collaborative. The nonprofit was established back in 2016. It applied to have a all year round high school in Baltimore City, all year round, to cover to reduce that gap in the learning that occurs in the summer.
Smart.
So to cover the entire year and bring the entrepreneurship, innovative, because Da Vinci was an inventor, a scientist, he was an artist, and he was an innovator of his time. So he was multifaceted, and we wanted Da Vinci Collaborative to mirror that, emulate that model, that a child can have multifaceted interest. So the Da Vinci Collaborative was formed, had a board. I served as a board member to be able to be the parent engagement coordinator. I'm bilingual. I'm fully biliterate in both English and Spanish. So they asked me to join the board. We were rejected by the school board in 2017. We were rejected because we did not have a full year schedule of professional development. We produced that, submitted for 2018. We were rejected again by the school board. We asked why. We did not meet all the rubrics that they said, and we didn't, there was a letter that we needed to submit, and we didn't do it within 10 minutes of some kind of deadline. We had like till 7 p.m. to do something, and we didn't. If we thought, wait a moment, if we can't, this is the issue with a child. They cannot succeed if we don't give them the expectations. We did not meet the rubrics, so we again met the rubrics. So now we're on third time to present. They rejected us, and we went to the Maryland State Department of Education, sued the board, sued them. In 2019, we got a pro bono attorney in Philadelphia. She did the work. We won. The state sided with us, but because the board has to ultimately decide who opens a school, we went for the third time in April of this year, and they said no. The reason Baltimore is not.
So the Baltimore City School Board, even though the state Department of Education agreed with you, the Baltimore City School Board did not approve your charter school grant.
Right.
3 times. We had won. We had won a $900,000 grant from the federal government to open a school because we were part of a pilot program that's been around. Imagine school around the country. These schools are opening up. Imagine what it could be to have a year round.
So Blanca, let's go to the broader picture. My understanding is that there are many challenges with charter schools when it comes to Baltimore City. Is that correct?
Well, why are they opening 2 charter schools not too far from here? I understand that maybe because Miss Angela, her name is Angela Alvarez, may have an influence on which schools are opening.
The school board has a lot of power.
Because we were rejected 3 times, and this is from the previous president of the board, who no longer is there, President Cicchini, because there's someone else now. But she said in front of everybody, we don't need your money, and our answer is no.
Well, see, the problem is because they giving the school board so much power. It's ridiculous because
they decide.
They even have the power to say what parents go in front of a court, in front of courts now.
What?
I mean, yeah, they have the power to say who goes in front of courts. Because when we was trying to figure out in court last week, why was this lady, who was in charge? So they kept saying Merlin Mosby's office. So we called Merlin Mosby's office, and they told us, no, we don't handle that part. Even though it's a part of her office, it's so small that it basically governs over top itself. Because we even called Peter Francho's office, and they told us that the school board is the one who make the decisions on who they prosecute and who they don't. So
well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Bully. Why isn't Isabel Cummings, the Inspector General, looking at Baltimore City Public Schools, says she want to find corruption?
You said, why isn't she?
Yeah, why don't she look at Baltimore City Public Schools? They look like millions of dollars are being wasted over there.
She cannot. It's a state agency, and it has to come from the state. And it's not her jurisdiction. So it's nothing that she can actually do to Baltimore City schools except for do the same thing we doing, is make phone calls.
Well, so is it because it's a state agency, or because they get state money? Is that the reason?
Baltimore City contributes 13%. What about that 13%? Now the average county contributes anywhere from 23 to 30%, but in Baltimore it's 13%. So what about the 13%?
You have to understand the difference between state control and local control. When it's a state control entity, it has to go through the state. And 9 times out of 10, these people does not pay attention to Baltimore City schools. It's hard to get them involved. They're just everybody want to keep pushing the buck. That's why we're asking for local control. So we can go to the whatever that lady name is and ask for the forensic audit. So we can go to the man and say, hey, this stuff right here is not working. If something else needs to be done. We're asking for to be able to do a recall on performances of people who govern over top of our school boards. So we're not just going at this all willy-nilly and just because, oh, well, she makes 340,000. I could care less if she made 550,000. Well, she is the highest paid in the state, highest paid CEO in the state, and the 4th in the nation. She gets paid more than the woman that's over top of 1 million students in New York City. Where does this even make sense? And you only got 79,000 students.
Yolanda, we're gonna have to wrap this up. Michael Haney, any final thoughts? Then we'll pass the ball to Marsha Jews.
Hey, Donnie, first of all, thanks a lot for inviting me to this. Marsha, thank you so much. You know, I can't tell you how much I appreciated being part of the Baltimore City public school system and keeping my child off the streets, away from drugs, which was a daily test. I mean, it was a daily test, being up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, making sure he got his work done, because the streets was calling him more than the school system was calling him. So to Ms. Hughes' point of understanding the trauma in households that may not necessarily look at mine and have a strong person that was going to insist that his child get an education, not to say where he is now and what he's doing now, but I knew it took everything I had to do so. You know, and we have to be accountable. We all have to be accountable. We need a revolution in this direction. We cannot count on the mayor, the governor, the city council, because it's our neighborhoods, our community. We have to take our school system back.
When I was running Alvin Ailey here, during the summer, we did Ailey Camp out at Morgan. And then in the fall, we started going out to UMBC. And the person who worked with me, Fidelma Ashley, I can't find her, and she's fabulous with those kids. And we were out there, and the kids were in the gym. And these are kids that, all of the things we've been talking about, they're really at risk. And I'll always remember this little boy. And he always stood apart. They'd throw him the ball, he would just let it dribble, right? And this was like 1990 something, right? And I said, why aren't you involved? Why aren't you doing something? Are you not enjoying the program? Are you not excited about it? And you can learn how to play basketball. You could play with your friends in your neighborhood. And he said to me, I ain't gonna live past 15, no way. Why do I even need to be bothered? There's no reason for me really to even be here. And we have too many children who don't have hope. And we have failed them. Everybody within the sound of my voice and everybody in this community, we have failed them. And then you want to know why we are where we are. It's because we have failed them. And it's more important for us to party than it is for us to take care of our children.
We read in the papers and hear on the air of killing and stealing and crime everywhere. We sigh and we say, notice the trend. This younger generation, or where will it end? But can we be sure that it's their fault alone? Are we less guilty who place in their way so many things that lead them astray? Too much money, too much idle time, too many movies of passion and crime, too many books not fit to be read, too much evil in what they hear said, too many children encouraged to roam, and too many parents who won't stay at home. Kids don't write the movies, they don't write the books, they don't paint gay pictures of gangsters and crooks. They don't make the liquor, they don't make the cars, they don't make the drugs, they don't make the bars, they don't make the drugs that muddle the brain. It's all done by older folk, greedy for gain. Delinquent teenagers, oh, how we condemn the sins of the nation, we blame on them. But by the laws of the blameless Savior made known, who is there amongst you to cast the first stone? For in so many cases, it's sad, but it's true. The title delinquent fits older folk too. Yolanda Bully, Marsha Jews, Michael Haney, thank you for your encouragement. All of the people online, Jason Rodriguez, you've redeemed yourself. Jess Morgan, Dr. Stella Levy. Teamwork makes the dream work. It takes a village. Don't give up the fight. Good night, everybody.